A cry in the jungle. The humid air pressed down, a suffocating blanket as Max, Bella, and Rocky moved with well-honed precision. Max, the seasoned leader, tested the wind, his dark fur glistening with a sheen of moisture. Bella, agile and swift, patrolled the perimeter, her ears constantly swiveling, picking up the slightest deviation from the jungle's hum. Rocky, youthful exuberance tempered by months of rigorous training, secured the rear. Together, they were a seamless unit, a silent presence threading the emerald labyrinth. Sergeant Miller's voice, tinny yet urgent, crackled through Max's harness speaker, redirecting them toward the less-traveled western sector. Whispers of increased poaching, Ahid warned. Keep sharp, team. A delicate sound, like glass lightly struck, pierced the insect drone. A keening wail, barely audible above the soughing leaves. Max halted, head tilted, deciphering. Bella went rigid, her gaze locked on a dense thicket. A soft whine escaped Rocky, his tail tucked. A low growl rumbled in Max's chest, a single, guttural punctuation. "What have you got, boy?" Sergeant Miller queried. Max whined, then nudged his nose toward the dense foliage before issuing another short bark. "Something's out there, Sarge," as Sergeant Miller responded. "Distressed, sounds like. We're moving in." With a quick nod, Max surged into the dense undergrowth. Bella, a shadow, flowed behind, navigating the interwoven vines with ease. Rocky, eager to prove his worth, charged through the thorny barricade, his coat snagging on the cruel barbs. The air thickened, heavy with the aroma of moist earth and the decay of fallen leaves. Sunlight dwindled, strained through the dense canopy overhead. Then, they saw it. A small clearing, a pool of light illuminating a colossal form. A gorilla, utterly still. A tiny infant clung to her silent chest, its frail body trembling, its cries echoing in the hushed space. The baby gorilla looked up, wide, brown eyes filled with primal fear and confusion, fixed on the approaching dogs. Max advanced with deliberate caution, every sense heightened. The cloying scent of death permeated the air, but beneath it, he detected the faint sweetness of milk and the raw panic emanating from the infant. This wasn't a poacher's trap. This was something far more devastating. A silent tragedy unfolding in the jungle's heart. Saving Coco. Dusty, the alpha of their trio, dipped his massive head, testing the wind. A sharp tang of terror mingled with an unfamiliar, earthy musk assaulted his senses. Beside him, Lunar emitted a soft, keening sound, tail tucked tight between her legs. Ever the sentinel, Shadow's ears swiveled, pinpointing each snap and whisper in the surrounding foliage. Cowering amidst the gnarled roots of a colossal banyan, a small gorilla trembled. Coco! Unsettling sorrow swam in his large, luminous eyes as they met Dusty's. A fragile whimper escaped the little ape, resonating deep within Lunar's core. She edged forward, one hesitant step, then another, until she could offer a comforting lick to his brow. Coco recoiled slightly, then melted into the touch, a quiet sigh puffing from his lips. Dusty gave him a gentle nudge, a silent affirmation of their shared instinct. This vulnerable creature needed sanctuary. The decision was instantaneous, a current of understanding flowing amongst them. Dusty settled to the earth, making himself as low as possible. Lunar nudged Coco closer, and with surprising tenderness, Dusty scooped the baby gorilla onto his broad back. Shadow spearheaded their return to the haven they'd carved out, charting a careful course. Dusty, now a mobile sanctuary, moved with painstaking deliberation, each footfall measured. Lunar remained close by, her tongue offering periodic assurances. Shadow scouted ahead, leaving no detail unnoticed. Jagged vines were bypassed. Perilous drops were skirted. The jungle, usually a riot of sound, hushed, as if acknowledging their solemn purpose. As the camp came into view, Coco, who had initially burrowed into Dusty's fur in blind panic, began to ease. A tentative hand reached out, patting Dusty's thick neck, a gesture of nascent trust that sparked a warm feeling in the big dog's chest. Safe now. Belonging. A new family. Instead of their usual boisterous greetings, the dogs erupted from the undergrowth with anxious whimpers. Alarmed, Sarah straightened from where she knelt, cleaning a mud-caked training dummy. Kaiser, usually a model of canine decorum, nudged her with a low rumble in his throat. Lunar circled restlessly, while Gunther stood sentinel, guarding something. Pushing past Kaiser, her pulse quickening, she saw what held their attention. Nestled between Gunther's massive paws was a gorilla infant. Miniature, unbelievably so, with huge, frightened eyes. Shock silenced her, stealing her breath. How? Where did he come from? Gingerly, she lowered herself, extending a palm. Easy there, little one, as she soothed, her voice barely a whisper. He recoiled, burying his face in Gunther's thick fur. With infinite care, Sarah coaxed him free, her fingers sensing the fragility of his wrist. He felt shockingly light, bordering on emaciated. Thankfully, no visible wounds, only a faint tremor rippling through his small frame. Coco, as she murmured, the name surfacing instinctively. It felt right. She scooped him into her arms and headed inside, the dogs forming an honor guard around them, their protectiveness radiating outwards. The familiar tang of antiseptic mingled with the savory scent of dog biscuits, a jarring contrast to the damp earth and the perils he had unknowingly faced. Sarah settled Coco onto a plush blanket in the corner, then delved into the supply cabinet. Formula, a bottle, a soft cloth. As she prepared the feeding, the dogs arranged themselves around Coco, their gazes unwavering. He watched her every move with wide, apprehensive eyes as she offered the bottle. He latched on instantly, suckling with a voraciousness that belied his size, his tiny hands clutching the bottle with surprising force. A wave of relief washed over Sarah, loosening the knot of fear in her chest. He was hungry, blessedly alive. He was safe, at least now. As she watched him feed, encircled by her faithful pack, a profound sense of belonging bloomed within her. She had no inkling as to the circumstances that brought Coco into their lives, but of one thing she was certain: he was one of them now, irrevocably family. Growing up dog. Coco blossomed. The skeletal frame filled out, replaced by the soft, rounded contours of a healthy infant. His wide, fearful eyes, once haunted by shadows, now sparkled with mischief. He spent his days tumbling with Max, Bella, and Rocky in the sun-drenched yard. They were surprisingly gentle, instinctively understanding his fragility. Max would let Coco cling to his thick fur as he lumbered around, Bella would nudge him playfully with her wet nose, and Rocky, the most energetic of the three, would patiently allow Coco to bat at his wagging tail. One afternoon, Sarah was hanging laundry when she heard a strange sound. A high-pitched, almost comical bark. She turned to see Coco, on all fours, his little chest heaving, attempting to imitate Rocky. The dogs, startled, paused their play and looked at Coco with tilted heads. He barked again, a little louder this time, then clumsily tried to chase his own backside, spinning in a wobbly circle until he lost his balance and tumbled onto the grass. The dogs erupted in a chorus of playful woofs, clearly amused. Sarah burst out laughing. It was the most joyful sound she'd made in weeks. She watched, tears welling in her eyes, as Coco, undeterred, scrambled back to his feet and tried again. Later that week, Sarah found Coco diligently digging in the flower beds. He hadn't quite mastered the technique. Instead of powerful scoops, he was making pathetic little scratches in the soil with his fingers, kicking up tiny puffs of dirt. The dogs, lined up beside him, were demonstrating, digging with impressive speed and precision. Coco watched them intently, then returned to his own efforts, grunting with concentration. Sarah knelt beside him, brushing a stray leaf from his matted fur. "You're never going to be a German Shepherd, little one," as she whispered, stroking his head. "But you're certainly growing up, dog." She knew, deep down, that he was healing, not just physically, but emotionally. He was finding his place, his pack, in this unlikely family. And in doing so, he was healing her too. The hollowness that had taken root after losing her husband was slowly being filled, not replaced, but augmented with a different kind of love, a wild, unexpected, and profoundly comforting affection for the little gorilla who thought he was a dog. Danger in the jungle. A low growl rumbled in Max's chest, a sound so subtle it was more vibration than noise. The jungle air, usually thick with familiar scents of damp earth and blossoming jasmine, carried a new, metallic tang. He lifted his head, ears twitching, scanning the dense foliage. Coco, mimicking Max's alertness, sat upright, his wide brown eyes mirroring Max's focused gaze. The gorilla pup even sniffed the air, mimicking the dogs. Further down the trail, Gunnar and Sarah picked up on Max's unease. They moved forward, their bodies low to the ground, noses working, until they reached the edge of the clearing. A glint of sunlight reflecting off something metallic caught Sarah's eye. She nudged Gunnar, and together they crept closer, their movements silent and practiced. There, nestled amongst the roots of a giant strangler fig, were two men. They were setting snares, thin wire loops designed to tighten around unsuspecting legs. The air crackled with the scent of human sweat and the oily tang of gun-cleaning solution. One of the men chuckled, a harsh, grating sound that sent a shiver down Sarah's spine. "Tonight, we feast," he said, adjusting a wire. "And tomorrow, we get paid." Coco, oblivious to the danger, bounded towards the men, his playful barks echoing through the trees. Max surged forward, intercepting the pup and knocking him to the ground with a gentle nudge. The poachers froze, their heads snapping up, eyes widening in alarm. Max, fur bristling, unleashed a deafening bark, a warning that ripped through the tranquility of the jungle. It was a call to arms, a declaration of war. Sarah and Gunnar echoed his cry, their barks joining the cacophony, a chorus of canine rage aimed at the intruders who dared to threaten their home. The dogs were ready to defend their family, even the small, hairy member who thought he was one of them. Defending our own. The glint of sunlight on metal snared Coco's attention. He bounded towards it, a discarded can shimmering near the forest edge. Three figures emerged from the trees, their shadows long and menacing. They moved with a purpose that set Samson's teeth on edge. A low growl rumbled in his chest, a warning echoed by Delilah and young Jasper. "There he is," one of the figures hissed, his voice raspy. "The little prize." The men advanced, nets unfurling in their hands. Samson launched forward, barking a furious challenge. Delilah was right beside him, her snarl a terrifying counterpoint. Jasper, emboldened by their bravery, nipped at their heels. The air filled with the frenzied sounds of canine defiance and the poachers' frustrated shouts. Coco, initially startled by the commotion, seemed to understand the threat instinctively. He stopped his playful antics and moved closer to his canine protectors, imitating their stance. He had watched them for so long, mimicking their behaviors, that their protective instincts seemed to have rubbed off on him. One of the men swung a net towards Coco, but Delilah intercepted, snapping at the woven mesh. The net tore slightly. "Get out of the way, Mutz," the poacher roared, kicking at her. Samson lunged, sinking his teeth into the man's trousers. Then, something unexpected happened. Coco, perhaps fueled by adrenaline and a primal urge to defend his family, let out a surprisingly loud bark, a sound he had never made before. It was a rough, guttural sound, but unmistakably a bark. He charged towards the poachers, beating his chest with his small fists, mimicking the displays he had seen the silverback gorillas perform in documentaries. The poachers stumbled back, momentarily stunned by the gorilla's unexpected aggression. Coco, alongside his canine companions, formed an unlikely but formidable defensive line. Heroes of the jungle. Coco stood his ground, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Sarah, clutching her phone, watched as flashing blue and red lights pierced the jungle canopy. Sirens wailed, a welcome symphony cutting through the tense silence. The poachers, startled by the sudden arrival, exchanged panicked glances. Their bravado evaporated, replaced by a fear as primal as the jungle itself. "Police! Freeze! Drop your weapons!" A voice boomed from a loudspeaker. The poachers, realizing they were cornered, reluctantly tossed their rifles onto the muddy ground. Uniformed officers, armed and alert, swarmed from the vehicles, quickly securing the area. One officer approached Sarah, his expression concerned. "Are you all right, And what about?" His eyes widened as he took in the sight of Coco, flanked by the German Shepherds, all seemingly guarding the baby gorilla nestled amongst them. "We're fine, thanks to them," Sarah said, gesturing towards the dogs. "They protected us." The poachers were led away in handcuffs, their faces grim. The jungle, once filled with the threat of violence, began to breathe again. The air felt lighter, cleaner. As the officers finished their work, the head ranger approached Coco and the dogs, a broad smile on his face. "You brave animals. You saved the day." He knelt, scratching Coco behind the ears. "You're all heroes of the jungle now." The other rangers joined in, praising the dogs and marveling at their loyalty. News of their bravery spread quickly. They were no longer just dogs, they were protectors, guardians of the innocent. Coco, basking in the attention, let out a happy bark, his tail wagging furiously. Even the baby gorilla seemed to understand the significance of the moment, reaching out a tiny hand to touch Coco's fur. The jungle, now safe, echoed with a chorus of grateful sounds, a testament to the unlikely heroes who had risen to defend it. A new home. Coco basked in the glow of adoration. Max, Bella, and even grumpy Rocky showered him with playful nips and licks. He was their hero, their little brother, the baby gorilla who thought he was a dog. But as Sarah watched him wrestle with Max, a pang of sadness resonated within her. Coco was thriving, yes, but he was also different. He mimicked their barks, their playful growls, their head tilts. He was a chameleon, blending in, but losing a part of himself in the process. She knelt, stroking Coco's velvety head. "You're amazing, Coco," as she whispered, "but you deserve to be with your own kind." The thought had been gnawing at her for weeks. Could she truly give him what he needed? The answer, heavy and unavoidable, was no. The next morning, Sarah spent hours on the phone, her voice cracking with emotion as she spoke to Dr. Alara Reed, director of the Redwood Gorilla Sanctuary. Dr. Reed listened patiently, her voice filled with understanding. "We've rehabilitated gorillas with unique backgrounds before," she assured Sarah. "We have a troop that would welcome him. We can help him rediscover his instincts." A week later, the sanctuary transport arrived. Coco seemed to sense the shift. He nuzzled Max, Bella, and Rocky, a low rumble vibrating in his chest, a sound unlike any dog-like imitation he'd made before. It was a gorilla sound, a fee-well. Max whined, licking Coco's face, then stepped back, a knowing gleam in his intelligent eyes. Bella nudged Coco with her nose, a silent promise of continued friendship. Even Rocky, usually aloof, leaned against Coco, a low grumble that sounded almost like affection. Sarah watched, tears streaming down her face, as Coco climbed into the transport, turning back once to give them one last, lingering look. It was a look of understanding, of acceptance, a silent acknowledgement that he was going home. As the van pulled away, Sarah knew she had made the right decision, even if it broke her heart a little. Coco was going to be a gorilla again. Friends forever. The sanctuary hummed with the low, guttural chatter of young gorillas. Coco, initially overwhelmed, quickly found his footing, or rather, his knuckle walk. He watched the others swing from the climbing structures, their dark eyes gleaming with playful mischief. He tried to emulate them, but his instincts, honed by years with Max, Bella, and Rocky, kept surfacing. Instead of purely aping their movements, he'd sit, offering a paw to a curious youngster, a gesture met with confused but intrigued stares. One day, he managed to coax a smaller gorilla, Meeker, into a sit. Then another. Soon, he had a small troop of gorillas, awkwardly but adorably, sitting on their haunches. He barked, a sound that still echoed in his dreams, and Meeker tilted her head, mimicking the sound with a soft, breathy huff. Coco felt a surge of joy. He wasn't forgetting them, and maybe, just maybe, he could share a little bit of their world with his new one. Sarah saw it all. She recognized the longing in Coco's eyes, the subtle shifts in his posture when he gazed towards the distant hills, the direction of their home. So, she made a plan. After weeks of careful coordination with the sanctuary and her family, she announced the first visit. The day arrived with a flurry of excited barks and nervous gorilla grunts. Max, Bella, and Rocky, tails wagging furiously, bounded out of the car, their noses twitching, instantly catching Coco's scent. Coco, on the other side of a specially reinforced enclosure, let out a joyful hoot, his eyes sparkling with unadulterated happiness. The reunion was a symphony of happy noises. Max barked, Coco hooted, Bella whined with affection, and Rocky simply pressed his large head against the barrier, his tail thumping a steady rhythm against the ground. They chased each other along the fence, a blur of fur and dark hair, their playful energy filling the air. Coco even showed off his new climbing skills, much to the amusement of his dog brothers and sister, who barked encouragement from below. Sarah smiled, watching her unique family together, their bond unbreakable, a testament to the extraordinary love that transcended species and circumstance. Friends forever, indeed.